All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this day 40 of the 40 days. So you made it. You can say you made it. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for still being here and meditating and continuing, even maybe more enthusiastic than before, more inspired than ever before, or more in trouble than ever before. Well, either one of those cases, it sounds great. It sounds great that you made it this far. So today we look at two things. It's like we look at we're going to do the meditation, and we're going to look at tape 543, opening the door to me. And that's going to be interesting. So which door is it, and isn't it open already, or what's going on? So that's one thing we're going to take a look at. And yeah, we start in this celebration, because it really is a celebration. We start this celebration by becoming completely still. And after we have the meditation, we did the meditation, I have a special request for you. And you will hear about that in a second. At least not a meditation, after the meditation. I'm starting to speak Dutch to you. That's how familiar you are to me, I guess. So starting with the meditation, I distilled a pearl out of the text of today, of the talk of Joel, opening the door to me. And this is I think the third one that I found. It is like a find. So I go through listening to the tape, and something suddenly starts to resonate. And it's like, wow, that is so beautiful to share this. So that's what happened this morning too, when I was preparing this. And I'd love to share that with you. But before I do that, it's always so great to remember that we're not going anywhere, that we don't have to do anything to make ourselves perfect. No, this is a matter of becoming receptive and being so open that you literally open the door to yourself. In fact, it's like the effort on your part is getting out of the way, basically, and that doesn't sound so nice, but it's actually a great experience if you do it. So that's the only thing that's going to motivate you to do so. Step back. Let him lead the way. Let God come to you. He knows his way. You know, he has no problem finding you. No. So that's the exercise that we're doing now by undergoing the meditation.
Right here, to make a beginning, you eventually, if you haven't already done so, you must come to an agreement within yourself as to whether or not you are just an accidental person who has been cast here on the earth to take care of yourself, or whether or not in the beginning you were the creation of a divine presence and power, and therefore sent forth to earth for a specific purpose. In other words, until you come into an agreement with yourself that there is a divinity, a divine being, a divine presence or power, that which the world ordinarily calls God, but which you may call anything you like, as long as you acknowledge that it is something that maintains the stars in their courses and keeps the oceans in their beds, brings forth only apples from apple trees and only peaches from peach trees, and only oranges from orange trees. If you acknowledge there is behind this universe a divine being, presence, or law, and that you are a product of it, then you are set for your search for this spiritual kingdom, which is ultimately to be found closer to you than breathing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this moment, for this. So yeah, like I said in the beginning, I have actually a special request, and we can do that immediately. So, and that is this. It's in fact very simple, and it's great to do it. Um, since we're so, say, aligned here at this point, in this moment, um, why not give it away? So, for sure, you have one in your mind, one that you want to give everything to, because you think this person needs it, or this you see something that doesn't seem to be right, but you want to give it everything, or maybe for yourself, or who knows. But yeah, this is the practice of giving it away, what you receive. You can call it a healing moment. That's great. That's wonderful. So let's give it to everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you. So yeah, there was a quiet, I didn't say that, but it was a quiet moment of healing. Okay, so we continue. We continue with the say. We continue with opening the door to me, opening the door to yourself, opening the door. Which door is it actually? So this is wonderful. So in the beginning of our meeting, I asked you, like, how are you doing in this 40 days? Like, this is the 40th day you accomplished 40 days of coming to this meeting every day or some days, but at least you were focused on it, and you're still here continuing in your, in your practice, which is totally lovely. That's one thing. But also it's like looking at it, like I said, it can be that you feel so inspired to continue, or that you maybe come to the point that you say like, oh my God, I don't know, the mess is even greater than before. What happened? And why am I saying this? Well, see, opening the door to me has everything to do with how you look at yourself. So it has to do with like a self-concept. And you saw this in the meditation already too. Joel is pointing in that direction. Like, you have to make a decision how you're going to look at yourself. And see, the variety of impressions that you can have of yourself is that you think everything is going all right, or that you're in deep trouble, that you feel completely lost, or maybe you're ecstatic. Maybe it's just all great, and it's like, well, it's like, yeah, just give a name to it. I don't know. So you saw in the historic, stories of Jesus, in the inspiration that Jesus gave, he ended up in the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's a nice reference to where you might find yourself. That you think like, I don't hear anything of God. I have no friends. I'm basically here all by myself. I'm praying. I do my best. Like, rather not go through another cross episode, death episode, whatever. But I can't say that I'm feeling so great. I'm in the middle of it. I'm in the middle of Gethsemane. I don't know. I'm lost here. It's like I don't know. I don't know where to go from here. So that's a great place to be. And it doesn't sound that great, does it? But it's a great place to be. So don't move an inch. Don't do anything. And stay right here. Don't do anything. Because the tendency of your mind so far has been to save yourself. And to save yourself is one thing. To have an idea of how to save yourself, that's actually more appropriate to say. Like, you have an idea about how you can come to your own resurrection, while you have literally no contribution to that, other than sitting here in Gethsemane with me, not knowing where to go, what to say, and how to do any of this. And this is the appropriate place to have a change occur, a change of a lifetime that will, say, open the door to yourself. And it's the last place where you would look for it, right? It's like, it's the last place where you would want to hang out, in a deep uncertainty, in like everything seems to be lost. It's dark. Everyone that I counted on is falling asleep. And now what? And now what? So if you recognize that, that's great. That's great. So I'm not saying that you have to feel like this, but it might very well be that you feel that way if you're really honest with yourself. And that's what we do in order to move forward. You have to be like totally honest about where you find yourself. that is going to be really helpful. So you can share it, of course, with a brother, someone you trust, and all this, absolutely. But in fact, the process that is taking place is beyond all of that. See, the thing with that what you do and that what you say is so far, I'm just saying as it is like every step, everything that is occurring in a relationship with yourself is leading to fear, right? It's like you apparently am still perpetuating the idea of fear. And how is that possible? Now, I love to say something about that because I'm familiar with the theme, of course. So, and where does that come from? Where does it come from that you say still trigger fear in yourself, that you still have moments of panic, like straight panic, where you have no idea where to go, or that you just want to run away from yourself? Now, this is an behind all of this is a great possibility for seeing what is actually occurring, and that is with your thinking, you cannot see yourself the right way. So every kind of say analysis that you do, or any kind of conclusion that you draw, is about something that isn't you, but it's something that you build up about yourself. It's literally your self-identification, your idea about yourself, who you think you are, how you see yourself when you look in the mirror, when you're talking to someone, when you are defending yourself, when you are doing all the things that you do. Like that self-identity is what fear is. That self-identity is what fear triggers, leading itself from one impossible situation into the other. And in fact, like trying to solve it within this limited identity, you could say, trying to solve the problems that it perceives and making even a bigger mess, or leading even to more fear. Now that's a big one, and that's say an incredible discovery that you can make in allowing this to come to you, what I'm actually sharing. Because when you take a really good look at it, it is like in every step along the way, you're defending yourself and trying to save yourself, or the image of yourself that you think you are, and protecting the things you love by doing whatever you need to do, being possessive, being in fact like paranoia, not basically trusting anything in the whole story, because you have every reason to doubt it, because your image of yourself is already a lie. You know, your image about yourself is what never can give you any sense of love. So that's huge, you know, that's huge. And that's the discovery you're making in this awakening process, in this awakening moment, in this transformational process. You know, so yeah, that's, you got to take it easy with yourself. So it is already quite something to discover this, but then to see it back in everything that you do, and how you talk to anyone, or how you not talk to anyone, or how you spend your day, how you spend your money, how you do whatever you do, like all based on an idea about yourself that isn't true, leading to other situations that aren't real. So here's where Joel comes in then in our story. What we saw in the meditation too is like you will have to ask yourself the question, like, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? I want to know who I am, you know, who I truly am, not all the images and things that I think about myself. No, this has nothing to do with my, say, associative thinking anymore, or any kind of objective thinking. No, this has to do with the true you. So that's where Joel is going to lead us in this talk. So this talk is divided in two sections. In fact, the tape was divided in two sections because the talk took about 2 hours. So the first hour is what we're looking at today, and the next, the next hour we will look at in 2 weeks, because next week there will not be a meeting. But anyway, so it's like opening the door to me sounds like, yeah, I'm willing, yeah, bring it on, bring it on. Yeah, why not? Yeah, absolutely. Open the door to me, yeah. But who has to do that? Like, well, I have to do that. I have to open the door to myself. But that's a bit different than it might sound in the beginning. So like I said, it has everything to do with seeing how you have, what you have made of yourself, and recognizing the lie that you're actually trying to sell the whole day, most of the day, maybe not all day. And yeah, that is what Joel will help us with, for sure. So he's saying this in his own way to the ones that are sitting there in that time, in that space. But basically he's sitting right here and he's going to share it with us exactly now and exactly here. So it's exciting to look at it this way and to step into the talk, and see what happens. So let's get Joel. Come on, Joel, come on in. I'd love to share this video with you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. When I first came to San Francisco, the message of the infinite way, we had an audience here of 12 students. And at that time, we had 2 books, The Infinite Way and Spiritual Interpretation of Scripture. We had very few students. The message was new, and yet San Francisco received it so beautifully that I taught here for 5 years and brought forth quite a few more books. First, second, and third San Francisco lectures were born here. Metaphysical Notes, Consciousness Unfolding, The Master Speaks. They were all products of the work here in San Francisco, and of course, the work developed elsewhere. And from here, I was called to the Northwest, the Middle West, and finally across the United States and on across to Europe. In the last 11 years since I was here, I have been traveling the entire world, with the exception of Central and South America and the Iron Curtain countries. There are about 23 or 4 books now published in the United States by 3 publishers. There are 26 books published in Great Britain by 2 publishers over there. And there are translations in Dutch, German, French, Japanese, and this year starting in Swedish. So you see that it has been a very active and very busy 11 years since I was here. And the work has spread widely. and been received, well received in many places. Now, the opportunity comes to spend more time in California, and probably this will be done. One, yes, I might say improvement in our work now is that presenting this message so many times in so many places has made it possible to impart it simply, understandably, and demonstrably. And from now on, our students should have a very easy time, a much easier time than ever before, in bringing themselves to the demonstrable practice of the message of the infinite way. I know that all of you who have read the writings or have been through the earlier classes realize that the major function of this work is its practical nature, the fact that the message must bring forth harmony in our human experience, or else it remains merely a philosophy, something to discuss or argue about, or believe in or not believe in. But the infinite way is not to be believed in. It is not expected that anyone shall have faith in it. It is an importation of spiritual principles which are definitely provable. And so there need be no belief in them and no faith in them. There must be the demonstration of them in our experience, and then after that there is no argument. To believe in something without any knowledge of it is a blind faith that usually leads to blind alleys. To have faith in something not known, not understood, can very often lead to blind alleys. And therefore, in approaching this message, do not concern yourself with whether or not you believe in it, or believe it, or with whether or not you have any faith in it. Because neither of these are going to prove helpful to you. There is just one way to approach this, and that is, first of all, through an inner feeling of being led to it. Not approaching it against your own will, but as if you had been directed or led to it, and you were then investigating it. The reason is this: the natural man receiveth not the things of God. The natural man is not under the law of God, neither indeed can be. And therefore, this is not a message that you can eventually learn with your mind and then prove. This message appeals only to that inner part of us which we call our spiritual faculties, or our power of spiritual discernment. It is more an intuition than anything else. There's no belief about it. There's no faith about it. It is an intuition. It is an inner feeling of rightness, very much as if you were to read something and then say, I always knew that. In fact, those who receive the greatest benefits from the study and practice of this work are those who actually, when they read the book, feel that they would have written it or could have written it if they had just taken the time and thought about it. In other words, this has a feeling of rightness within them. One man did actually say here in San Francisco that Joe stole these books from him if he had written them. In other words, there was always an inner conviction in just what this message is saying. And the reason is that the message wasn't made up. It didn't come out of my head. It isn't something I studied. It isn't something I thought up or invented. It was an inner, natural unfoldment from some infinite source. And the years have proven that this is true. That this is a message that has behind it divine inspiration, divine power. Therefore, it could not possibly be mine or that of any man. It must be an unfoldment from that infinite invisible. For this reason, then, the message isn't really mine. It is a message that is rooted in consciousness. And therefore, any individual and many individuals have received the awareness of these principles, even if they haven't written them down or thought them out in words. I can illustrate that simply for you by telling you an experience that took place here on the first night of our very first class in San Francisco. I heard myself saying, my conscious oneness with God constitutes my oneness with all spiritual being and idea. Therefore, I am one with the source of all, and I am therefore one with all, with everything and with everyone of a spiritual nature, anywhere. Well, you know, I had never heard such a statement, never thought such a statement. And it turned out that that statement became the theme of the book that came forth from that class. And this is the part that will strike you immediately. Actually, my entire demonstration of spiritual life and everyday living up to that point and ever since then has been based on that principle. Yet I didn't know the principle in words until that particular moment when it came forth. And so I am sure that those of you to whom this message will appeal will discover that you also have actually known these principles, even if they hadn't appeared to you in words or thoughts, you will discover as you go on that you have known them. And those who come to that realization will naturally derive the most from them, because you already have within you that which is to come forth. So it was with each of the classes that unfolded here, which eventually became books. It turned out that I already had those principles established within me. They had been a part of my livingness ever since my first spiritual experience 17 years before this message came through. And yet, I didn't know the words, I didn't know the language, I didn't know the thoughts, until in teaching they came through. And so as I look at the books now, I can see that these are the principles I lived by, even when I didn't have the words. In all parts of the world today, students tell me and write me that they are experiencing that very same thing, that they know these principles, they seem, some of them, always to have known them, and yet they had never come into focus. They had never presented themselves to them in actual words and thoughts. Now, let us start with the foundation of this work. All of my 34 years in the spiritual world had their start when, with the war threatening, the thought came to me, how can there possibly be a war if there is a God? The world is full of churches, the world is full of people praying. Certainly the world is full of God. How then can these things be? And it was only a few weeks after that that I learned about what the world calls sin. I saw it in Paris, in Berlin, in Vienna, as I had never even heard of it before. And I wondered about this too. How can there be conditions of this kind? How can there be men and women of this type? And there be God? How do you bring these two things together? How can you account for churches and people praying to God and all of these evils existing on earth, man's inhumanity to man? Well, this question stayed with me for 20 years before I received an answer. And I hope that that will encourage some of you who may find that your spiritual wisdom doesn't come quickly. Don't be impatient. It may take you 20 years also to get your answer. And it's worth waiting for when it comes. Even if it's 30 years, it's worth waiting for. Because when it comes, it's tremendous. It changes the whole nature, not only of your life, but of the lives of many who touch your consciousness. It seems to me that truth does not reach our consciousness readily, firstly because we are not prepared for stark truth. I don't believe anyone could face truth face to face and live. unless they were prepared for it. And that preparation, in my case, took a lot of time. When the answer came, it was a startling answer. There is no God in the human world. If there were, there would be no sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, war, slavery, or man's inhumanity to man. But God can be brought into the human world through the consciousness of an individual. Anyone can bring God into their experience, but not as long as they are the natural man of whom Paul spoke, not as long as they are the man of earth, not as long as they are the creature who is not under the law of God, neither indeed can be. Something must take place in the experience of an individual before God can be brought into his experience and take over and govern. The final step, Paul revealed, was, I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life. In other words, Paul had reached that place where he was no longer under the law of sin, disease, death, lack, limitation, or accident, but rather he was God-governed, Christ-governed. He was no longer limited to human capacities, but could say rather, I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life, and I can do all things through Christ. No limitation, no lack of education to interfere, no lack of experience to interfere, because I'm no longer limited to my education or lack of it. I'm no longer limited to my experience or lack of it. I'm no longer limited to what mortal man can do to me, because through Christ, not myself, but through Christ, I can do all things. Now, we are born as creatures, or the natural man. We are born into this three-dimensional world, and of old, there was just one way of living, and that was physically, materially. Men had to earn their living by the sweat of their brow, hard work on the farm, hard work building roads, hard road building homes to live in. Very hard work, physical labor. And no 4-day week. But as man evolved, another dimension of life was discovered. And this was the mental. And all of a sudden, man was no longer just a physical being, living physically, but now he was a combination of the mental and the physical, and he could turn to his mind for most of the work. Gradually, the body had less to perform as the mind took over and performed most of the functions of life. We became a combination of mental and physical beings. And out of the mind, we grew forth, early in the world's history, the Chinese grew forth probably the greatest invention of all time, the wheel. And you can just about imagine how life changed for those people after somebody thought up through the mind the wheel. A few years ago, we were in Scotland, and we saw some farm work taking place without the benefit of a wheel. They had boards laced together and then harnessed to the horses. And the horses were drawing these boards with products on them, with produce. Heavily laden boards being dragged along the roads by horses without any wheels. If you could have imagined the labor on the part of the men controlling the horses, the labor on the part of the horses drawing those heavily laden boards, when a simple wheel, 4 wheels attached to that board would have made it all so simple, so easy. Well, life before the wheel was just that arduous. But you see, it was the mind that brought forth the idea of the wheel. Then the wheel was built, and so man, drawing on his mental capacities, makes his physical life easier. And so it is that through the mind we have brought forth great inventions, great discoveries, all of which have made our human lives simpler and easier. As a matter of fact, through the mind, eventually, there came forth a moral code. Now, I know that when you stop to think of it, it will surprise you to know that it was only a few hundred years BC that this moral code was brought forth that we call the 10 Commandments. That men had been living without such code before then. You can really and readily understand what a physical life it must have been without even a moral code to live by. Now, all through the years, man has been progressing on both levels, the mental and the physical. And because of his mental development, his physical life is not only easier, but really longer. And this will continue to increase. Throughout all of the ages, there have been people set aside from the rest of the world who have discovered a realm beyond the mind. These are ordinarily known as mystics, readily identifiable as men who have brought forth new or different religious teachings. Not religions, none of them ever brought forth a religion. They all brought forth religious teachings which afterward were embodied in religion. We speak of we'll use the word Krishna, the name Krishna. And although it is impossible to identify Krishna as a man, undoubtedly Krishna was a spiritual principle of life which came to the consciousness of a man, much in the same way that later there was a man named Gautama. Through his search, through his dedication, eventually marvelous spiritual principles were revealed called the Buddha, or enlightenment, or light. And he was known then as Gautama the Buddha, and eventually the was dropped and he became Gautama Buddha, and sometimes just Buddha. And then years later, a man named Jesus reached this higher dimension of life. The spiritual secrets and principles were revealed within him. These principles called the Christ. And he became known as Jesus, the Christ, then simplified to Jesus Christ, and now sometimes referred to as simply Christ. But just as Krishna was not a man, but a spiritual revelation given to man, just as Buddha was not a man, but a spiritual revelation given to a man, so Christ was not a man, but a spiritual revelation given to a man. Throughout the ages, there have been men who have received spiritual principles, spiritual light, spiritual wisdom, spiritual power. Not from the body, not from the mind, but from the higher source, sometimes called God consciousness, sometimes called Christ consciousness, sometimes called the Buddha mind. But it is a fourth dimensional consciousness, and it is as much above the mental and physical as the mental is above the physical. And just as the mental realm, when it is reached, brings forth a wisdom that can be used in the physical realm, so when the fourth dimensional realm is reached, that which Christ Jesus called the kingdom of God, the realm of God, when that is reached, it brings forth laws, powers, also applicable to the mental and the physical realm. So that anyone who reaches the spiritual realm, that which is called the kingdom of God, will discover that their mental faculties and their physical faculties are far superior to those who have not yet touched or been touched by that higher realm. In other words, all that takes place in an individual in the way of impartation from the kingdom of God affects the mind and the body, the business, the household. In fact, it touches every facet of life. It makes the artist a better artist, the writer a better writer, the mathematician a better mathematician, because this realm gives the individual access to powers and wisdoms that are beyond the human. Come back again to Paul's statement. I can do all things through Christ. All things through Christ. I live, yet not I. This This fourth dimension lives my life. And so every individual, whether they have been those who have attained the highest consciousness or those like ourselves who have attained only drops of it, each of us in proportion finds that our mental and our physical capacities are greater, our human relationships are better, and, as was revealed to me, that contact acts like a presence that goes before me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining today in this Life by Grace, and of course in the end of the 40 days. And so I put up a new schedule for the next week, so in case you wonder what's next, what's going on, so you can see it on the website ebhub.com. And so there will be a change. I cannot go through all of it. That's why I made a schedule. That's great. A little program. So go to the website if you want to be updated on what is when. So the first meeting is tomorrow morning, European time. So that's 1 a.m. Pacific time for the Master Teacher video. So next week, Sunday, then, there will be no Life by Grace meeting. So we continue a week after that. So there's a little Thanksgiving break, kind of. In Canada, they have already Thanksgiving, and it's great. So that's really lovely. And of course, the American Thanksgiving takes still a moment. But anyway, so there's a break next week. There's no Life by Grace meeting. So now Tuesday, for those interested, Tuesday there's we're going to take another look to the private 25 tapes, and so you can sign up for it, and then you will be updated, and you can be part of the meetings that we will have on Tuesdays at noon Central Time, 7 p.m. Central European Time. And so we will meditate, we will have a moment of introduction to a certain tape, and you can ask questions afterwards, or you can share things if you discovered something in the tape that you're studying. So this is an individualized meeting, you could say. It's of an individualized way of studying, but to be inspired together. So we meet every week, almost every week, and you can keep up with your study flow, you could say, and share your inspiration with others, and that's really lovely. So that's what we're going to do on Tuesday. You're invited. Please join if you feel like it, but let me know, then I can send you an email with some more details. Right. So thank you so much for joining in this 40 Days Awakening experience, and in the Life by Grace meetings as we continue them. And see you soon. I love you. Thank you so much, and see you soon. Thank you so much.